Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
Imagine making a difference. No, imagine being the difference. The difference between I can't and I can, or I won't and I will. The reason someone chooses to wake up and strive for greatness. In life, it can feel like everything is working against you. Let's defy all odds and break generational curses. This is Overstepping Poverty with Daquan and Zacchaeus. Welcome back to Overstepping Poverty, the podcast that provides you with tips, tricks, and hacks in overstepping poverty. My name is Daquan Brooks, and I'm here with my co-host Zacchaeus Shaw. How you doing, Zacchaeus?
I'm doing good, man. It's a beautiful day outside. It's beautiful to be here with yet another special guest, somebody that we always run into. We see him all over the place. He's doing big things, but we never have really got a chance to sit down and talk, so I'm super excited to have him here today.
I completely agree. You know, a lot of our paths have co-aligned in the past, and of course, where we're going in the future as well. So it's only right for us to have this special guest on the podcast and really discover more, not only about ourselves, but also about our special guest as well.
Yeah.
But before we get into our special guest here, I have to know, Zacchaeus, how are you doing though? Like, mentally, physically, how are you doing?
I'm good. Right now, today, last few days this week, I feel like have been good. I feel like there's a ton of changes that have been going on in my life for the last few months, especially with bringing Xavier into the world and not getting any sleep, those type of things. Definitely a battle, but I'm blessed, man. I'm so excited, like I said, to be here today to interview. This is the second day in a row that we're getting to sit down with a guest of ours. And I just leave these conversations and these moments feeling so much better, like just so much energy. So excited to be here. How are you?
I'm good. And I just kind of want to piggyback off of what you said there of one, just being blessed. I mean, I think every single day, just having the opportunity to do what we do, and have the platform that we have, it's a blessing, you know, and there's one thing that I always try and remember and remind myself is that this can all be gone tomorrow, you know, so I have to live, you know, just in the moment today, and just be grateful for everything that we have and everything that we're getting in life, and everything as far as what we're putting out there to help other individuals as well, just to even have that opportunity to do that. So blessed there, but also, you know, we keep bringing it up and it's not it's probably me, but we're 3 months away before I fully grow my family, you know, having a little boy. And I know you keep trying to get the name out of me, but it's just not going to happen. So stop asking.
I can't even get a letter.
You can't even get a letter. Can't even get a letter. No, I gave you a letter. I said it's one in the alphabet, right? Yeah, that's true. I gave you multiple. So, but yeah, anyways, you know, I just want to get into today's episode here, and just really get into and engage in the conversation that we have, for our listeners here. So why don't you bring our special guest in?
Well, like I said, and like you just said, we have a very special guest. He is a fellow Yote. Go Yotes.
Go Yotes. Let's go.
He has a nonprofit called Hurdle Life Coaching Foundation, and he does a lot of work helping people reintegrate into the community and really become successful people, because everybody deserves second chances, and he does so much more than that, but that's something that really is making a difference in our community. And I'm happy to introduce Terry Liggins.
Yes, sir.
Yes, welcome.
Yes,
welcome.
sir.
Let's go.
All fired up.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the podcast. Like we've been talking about, we're so excited to have you on.
Yeah.
You know, we feel like it's important to have you on with a lot of the things that you're doing and a lot of the experiences that you've had and how you've persevered through a lot in life. So
thank you.
I just got to ask, what is your favorite thing about downtown Sioux Falls? Because I see you everywhere.
Sure.
In downtown Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
Dressed to impress every single time too. Like I get a lot of compliments of you know, my apparel and what I'm wearing, but then I go out and then I see this man. I'm like, dang. I'm like, I need to get a little note out of his wardrobe. Right. So I love it. I love it.
I appreciate it. Well, I live to inspire. That's one of the things that keeps me, in my discipline to make the next right decision. And I didn't even know that right and wrong can be subjective, but there is a moral right and wrong, depending on your faith, and spiritually there's a right and wrong. Yeah. And I believe in doing my best to make the next right decision, because I believe my example is the greatest message that I can send. Absolutely. And so I live to inspire. And so if it's through fashion, so be it. Right? But I definitely look to model wise and healthy decision making as well. So as you mentioned, with my work as a life coach and a career coach, I come alongside of people who have a history of making poor choices and dealing with those consequences, and then how I get to come alongside of them and help to reevaluate their beliefs, their preferences, their environments, and then to help people to make good decisions moving forward.
I love it. There's one thing that I have learned in life, not for all people, but for most people, as come age comes wisdom, right? Yeah. So I'm assuming that a lot of this wisdom you have kind of grown into.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to take it back to kind of where you started. Like, obviously we weren't all perfect when we were younger or anything like that, right? There's always a growth period. But I want to know what yours is. Where'd you come from? Where was home before home?
Yeah.
Now?
That's a good one. And I remember the question you asked me about downtown Sioux Falls, and I'll just say quickly that what I enjoy about Sioux Falls, the community, is how it's growing and how diverse it is. And I think that reflects well in the downtown as well.
Absolutely.
You see the different type of businesses that are now down there and the different type of new initiatives that are happening. I think that Sioux Falls as a whole, downtown reflects it. It's growing and it's diversifying. So, love getting down to La Luna Cafe. And over to Swamp Daddy's. I was there today. And so those types of things, I think, is a marker that makes me proud to be here in Sioux Falls.
Absolutely.
I agree, man.
Before Sioux Falls, I was in Vermilion down at the University of South Dakota. Before Vermilion, I was in Omaha, Nebraska. Okay. So that's where I was born and raised, there in Omaha, in North Omaha. And so that's the part of the community that is saturated with drugs and violence and gangs. And that's not uncommon to any inner city. Right. You go to Miami or Detroit or parts of California, there's an inner city everywhere. And in Omaha, that's where I was born into. And my mother, Cynthia Liggins, shouts out to my mama. Yeah. She's going to love that. Mom. Yeah. But my mother, Cynthia, raised 6 kids on her own. Oh, wow. And when my father left our family, I was 4 years old, and my mother was expecting her 5th child at that time. Wow. She ended up having 6. So after my dad left, my baby sister was born 2 years after my little sister, and I was raised in a single parent home with 5 siblings. And growing up, my environment was rich with love and acceptance, forgiveness, grace. So often what's misperceived about growing up in poverty is that, like, you're poor. Right. Material wise. Right. Hand-me-down clothes. Yeah. Right. Food pantries. Yeah. Angel tree programs from the churches for Christmas and free turkeys from the community centers. Yeah. Right. But my mother, she was very wealthy when it came to joy, love, grace, and acceptance. And so our doors stayed open to our friends, to neighbors. My mom is still that way today, where you never know who's going to show up today at my mom's house. Mama sent house. Right. Yeah. And so I've been able to adopt that and keep that with me. This hospitality, this welcome you into my world. And I find that as a leader, that willingness to invite people into the space with me has really helped me to grow kind of the notoriety and the visibility that I have today. But that started with my mother and her heart.
Let me ask you, because I want to dive into that a little more, because it's interesting you say that. I thought about that recently, how, it's just kind of the struggle, right? People go through the struggle, but what really makes us who we are? It's the struggle, right? And not all times are bad. And so with your mother having so much love and energy that filled you, did you always notice that, or did you notice the material difference growing up, and if so, at what point did you realize, like, oh, like, they might have that, but they don't have the love that I get from my mom?
Yeah. Zach, that was in hindsight. Going through it as a 7 and 8, 9 and 10-year-old, I very much felt the poverty that was the hand-me-down clothes, the shoes from Payless. You know, I'll be honest, the roaches, the mice,
right?
You know, kind of that infestation of sorts that was with us as a family in those ghettos, in those projects. I grew up in projects. And so I felt that, right? And when I went to school, I was treated from what I looked like, not based on where I came from. And so I have a history with being bullied and picked on and going to so many different schools as a youth. You know, my mom, we moved around a lot. I actually ended up going to like 17 different schools in 18 years.
Wow.
And there was a very tumultuous time when I was 10 and 11 where I went to 3 different 4th grades and 3 different 5th grades. So that really ballooned that number. But that was at the time where my mom decided to leave an unhealthy relationship. And so just to layer on some more of my childhood, for the first 10 years of my life, my mother was dependent and had a substance use issue with crack cocaine.
Okay.
And, you know, she had her own reasons, like everybody do, to kind of deal with stress in the way that it was. And her and my aunts and some of my mom's cousins, they were all kind of victims of this crack epidemic. And for the first 10 years of my life, my mom was a user, but my mom was always a good person. And there came a point where she said she got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And the person she was with at that time made a promise to her that he didn't keep as it pertained to a Christmas tree and our Christmas. And my mom said that was enough. Right. And she packed us up and took us to a women and children shelter when I was 10 years old. And I spent 90 days in a homeless shelter as a 10-year-old boy, not knowing I was homeless or what my mom was really going through. Right. But during that time, I went to 3 different 4th grades and 3 different 5th grades. And that was just a really unearthing time in my childhood to be a 10-year-old homeless youth with my mom and my siblings at the Lydia house in Omaha. Right. But I can tell you that changed my life forever because my mom put down that drug and hasn't picked it back up in 28 years. Wow. And so she's my example of resilience and recovery. I see that in hindsight. And I was going through it. It was uncomfortable. I was uncertain. I was afraid. I was going to school afraid, you know, being the new kid and those things. But to look back over my life, I realized how privileged I was in the spiritual, but the material lacking, I very much felt.
Right. No, that's powerful because I think there's people that will be listening to this that will be able to relate to a lot of that and feeling like they didn't have what other people had and knowing what was going on at home, but going to school and not necessarily opening up about those things because what happens at home stays at home. And what, you know, and that's how it was for a lot of people. From that point, getting into middle school, getting into high school, you ended up getting to college, you know, amongst all these things and all these odds and statistics that said you wouldn't. Getting through middle school and high school can be hard for anybody. What was that journey like, navigating those tough years, coming from where you were coming from and still getting the opportunity to further your education? Yeah.
Well, because of my environment, you know, not having a dad there, my mom working those 2 jobs, I was very unsupervised. And when it come to middle school and high school, I was essentially making my own choices after school. Because my mom only had a short window between her full-time job and then going to work as a cashier at the local candy store. So if I wanted to see my mom, I went to the candy store to see my mom. Otherwise, we were able to roam. Okay. And growing up in the inner city, that's dangerous if you're roaming alone. So, you know, you find a place to belong. And in inner cities, those are gangs. And you join a gang for belonging and for safety. Yeah. So I ended up, you know, gang affiliated, and you know, that comes with the culture and choices and decisions. And most of the time, you end up in juvenile detention and on juvenile probation. And that's exactly what happened to me too. And I look back over that experience with gratitude though, because my juvenile probation officer required that I get involved in extracurricular activities. Okay. And so now here it was, I was, you know, 14 years old, you know, went through a diversion program, then ended up on probation, and I got required to do sports or something extracurricular.
I love it.
And it was when I was a 10th grader at Benson High School in Omaha that I made one of my first basketball teams. I hustled my way on there too. I was scrappy. I wasn't clean. I was gritty. Like it was the hustle that they saw that I had. I actually made the team as the 12th man on a 12th man roster, and beat out somebody who was on their freshman team who they likely would have kind of grandfathered in. But my heart and my hustle, they was like, we want him on the team. And so I ended up making the basketball team. And then after that was the track season. And I had never ran track. And I go out there and figure out that I have a gift called hurdling. So much so that I became the school record holder for Benson High School in the 300 intermediate hurdles. Went to state, and my record still stands there. And then end up earning an 85% scholarship to the University of South Dakota, where I competed and completed my degrees there as a first-generation college student. So does that happen without juvenile probation? Probably not.
No.
So,
You know, I feel like it doesn't, there's more to that though, because even when I went through high school, middle school, elementary school, I found that when I did join, after school sports or anything like that, I became a part of a group. I became part of something more. But it taught me life lessons all the way through that I could take on to truly, I went to University of South Dakota as well. Also did track, but it taught me how to truly navigate in life, And so what I want to know is, when you were forced into these sports here, what is it that you took out of it when you did become involved in something greater than just you? Because a lot of those sports, even though track, people are like, yeah, you got to do it on your own, it's still a team sport.
Absolutely.
So what are some life lessons that you feel like you learned going through those?
Oh yeah, good question. The big thing for me, outside of like character, that comes from athletics and team building and setting goals and believing that you can accomplish it, right? You never know who's going to be the victor heading into this competition.
Right.
And really, it's the person who wants it more is going to end up being victorious. Skill matter, but I'm big on who wants it more.
That dog.
Yeah. And so I developed a lot of go get it from being in team sports. But what I also really realized mostly was that there was a wiser, safer way, more positive way to spend my time.
Okay.
All of a sudden, this became a place to be that wasn't risky, dangerous, or had negative consequences associated with it. I started to realize that this was a better place to spend my time than leaving school immediately just to go possibly get into God knows what and likely some trouble.
Absolutely.
And so what it gave me is really a detour from the regular options that are available to an inner city kid with no supervision at home.
Give you
Absolutely.
structure.
Yeah. And a family, right? Like it started to give me this brotherhood and sisterhood with my teammates that I didn't have in my neighborhood. That type of sibling camaraderie was with gang affiliated people. Right. And so now I had positive people doing positive things. And I was really fortunate that the people in my neighborhood saw that I was involved there and I was skilled there. And they encouraged me to really breathe into my identity as an athlete. And so I was really guarded by my gang association to say, stick and stay with that athletic plan, and it ended up working out for me.
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that, just because there are a lot of people that are going through this exact same, toughness, that environment where they're earning for someone to have their back, to be like a brother or a family member, or just kind of have some guidance, of course, on that. I was one of those kids, and I found out that sports, you not only did you again learn life lessons, but then you also brought in family that you would take throughout the next 4 years of your life on that. And so for people that are listening, of course, and you're looking for that next place to go, that place to go right after school, join sports. I promise you that you're going to find so much more into that. And it's going to take you through a lot of life journeys, and it's going to teach you a lot of life lessons that will honestly propel you forward more than a lot of people than you even know.
Yeah.
So,
and I want to get this perspective from you as somebody that with troubled youth, finding sports and diving into sports and really finding confidence, right? Because that was probably the biggest thing that you gained from all of that was the confidence to believe in yourself and know, like, I'm really the best.
Yeah,
right?
pretty good.
And then getting into college, going to college, getting your degree, that transition that we see from most athletes to life after sports, though, is a tough one for a lot of people. What was that like for you? How did that transition from sports to no longer being considered, a collegiate athlete or taking your athletics any further? What was that like?
Yeah. I think it was for me like it is for most, which is very confusing.
Okay.
Especially as an athlete. You put so much of your identity into athletics and even the desire to take it to the next level that when that doesn't happen, which is more times than not, most student athletes are met with this identity crisis. I think for me though, Zach, I saw it as a vehicle. I necessarily didn't want to go pro as a track athlete or need that level of arrival to that status.
Right.
And now it helped that I was winning a lot of races just in my varsity association. I was, at USD, might as well just say it, I have 9 individual conference titles, 3 team titles.
Wow.
8-time national qualifier, 6-time All-American, all top 5 finishes for those All-American finishes. Wow. I got 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd twice, and my senior year I became a national champion hurdler for the University of South Dakota. So I had a nice, give me some.
Right, let's go. Let's go. I love it.
Right? So I had a nice dose of victory already, right? And so for me, after college, it wasn't like more victory athletically. It was like, okay, life. And for me, I didn't mention this yet, but it's worth mentioning. I became a dad at 15.
Wow. Okay.
That was another one of those, in my childhood that shaped me is my oldest son. I have 3 children today, 23, 19, and 10. My oldest was born 8 days after my 15th birthday. Wow. And so even going into college as an 18-year-old freshman, first generation student, I've always had this extra level of responsibility and obligation for legacy and role modeling for my son. And when I finished my bachelor's and master's in athletic experience, I had a 10-year-old when I was 25. And I was faced with real life bills and challenges as a single dad. His mother hasn't been in his life. Part of his story is his mother disappeared. And then his maternal grandparents disappeared, all within the first 3 years of his life. And so he belonged to us in the Liggins family. But while I was in college, he was with grandma. And then I moved him in with me when I was 23 and he was 8. And I finished grad school with my son and I got help from my family. But when I was 25, after my master's degree, I had a 10-year-old with 10-year-old needs. I had real bills, and it was hard to find my fit and my place in the world.
Right.
My first job out of college was not in the realm of the things I studied.
What did you graduate with?
I graduated with a bachelor's in criminal justice and leadership studies, and then I have a master's in nonprofit administration.
Okay.
And my first job out of college was as an insurance agent.
Okay.
And I did 10 months as a life and accident producer, and learned a lot about financial earning potential and all these things that grab a hold of a lot of newly emerging professionals out of college. And it was a great experience. But in that time in my life too, because I wasn't making ends meet, I also was presented with a get-rich-quick opportunity from a couple of friends of mine. And what happened in that moment was my red flags didn't go off because it was illegal, because I grew up seeing illegal activity all the time. I grew up seeing people taking shortcuts for fast money all the time. And so when I got asked to do that, and I'm in my situation of desperation right out of college with the promise of we wouldn't get caught, I went for it. And we did get caught. And my story is so colorful because after a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a national championship, I found myself federally indicted and ultimately surrendered to federal prison in the year 2015. And I got out in 2016 here in Sioux Falls to start my reentry and my recovery.
Wow. what a journey just up into that point, to add in the responsibility of having a child, getting through all of that, and then being hit with another thing that probably felt like your life was over at that point. Mm-hmm. Right? And mentally, can you tell us what that was like?
Hell?
Yeah.
On earth? I mean, there's no greater, scarier feeling than the federal government looking for you,
right?
For a not positive reason.
Mm-hmm.
When the U.S. Marshals are looking for you, they don't stop until they find you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go to your mom's house, your grandma's house. They're going to access that database that has a lot of your information, and they don't sleep until they find you.
Wow.
Once they want you.
Right.
And I was terrified under federal indictment, and I was confused because here it was, I was this first generation college student, pride of my family, star athlete and student leader at USD. I led our Black Student Union, started the very first Black Student Union at USD.
Wow.
Became the Student Government Association president at USD. And then I was federally indicted and on my way to prison. I was confused. But when I got to prison, I got some help there. I went to treatment when I was in prison. This is how my life changed and where my life changed. I ultimately did 14 months in federal prison. I would have done longer had I not went through the treatment program and accepted the responsibility for my actions in that conspiracy, because I was sentenced to 39 months.
Mm-hmm.
But for 13 and a half of the 14 months I was in federal prison, I was in an environment that opened me up to mental health, how I think, my beliefs, my values. And this was a conversation I had never had in 30 years in my life.
Wow.
Of what are my beliefs? What are my values? What are my thoughts that I had before making a decision? I've never slowed down to think about the decision I was going to make. I went with my gut. I went with what felt right, versus what is right. And by spending 14 months in prison, it was really a pause time where I got to really evaluate who Terry was and what shaped him. And then I got to redesign and redefine the things that I was going to be about moving forward. And this is the person you see today is a redefined and a redesigned Terry Liggins than the one that ended up in federal prison.
And you rise like the phoenix from the ashes.
Right.
That's beautiful.
Right. So, after that, of course, did the crime, paid the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're no longer in prison. I just have to know, what was it like putting the pieces of puzzle back together, to reshape, reinvent, to have that motivation to come out of prison, to know, like, you know what, this is a new life. This is a new start.
Yeah.
I'm going to start it today.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what helped is my athletic mindset, the Hurdle Life mindset, right? The name of my nonprofit is Hurdle Life Coach Foundation.
Yep.
The core company belief is that just like on the track, the obstacles and barriers in life are also meant to be hurdled. So we say Hurdle Life.
I love that.
And between you and your finish line are hurdles. Finish lines are your goals.
Right.
But for me, I knew who God had created me to be. I just hadn't tapped into that yet. I had tapped into portions of it, but I had not seen my full potential. But I knew the vision God gave me to be a community leader and an influencer and a person who inspired the masses like Dr. King did.
Right.
And so when I got out, I knew who I was, but I also knew I had a task before me to demonstrate that and prove that to the community. But with me, I was wired as a hurdler.
Yeah.
So I was excited. I was
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah.
Fired up. Ready to take on this new endeavor of hurdling my reentry and my recovery. And so I had such an open mind and an excitement to have that behind me. And then I was able to just come into this community, get involved in some of the right nonprofit organizations like Face It Together Sioux Falls that provides peer-to-peer recovery coaching support. People who have had addiction and recovery challenges, they live that experience and they can hold space with you. I still have my coach today. I still go to see my coach today at Face It Together. And then another program that really shaped it up for me was called Genesis Mentoring Program. And that's offered through the Community Outreach Center, which currently today I actually sit on the board of directors.
Wow.
So I go from being a participant in their mentoring program for just as impacted adults to going through this process, growing in community, and sitting on the board of directors. Wow. But it was in that program that I got my very first mentor in my life.
Wow. At what age?
31.
Okay.
So all this time in my life, I got these coaches and people that were there and could give to me, but I was never the type of fertile ground that would let those seeds plant. I would let all my relationships be transactional with my teachers and coaches. No one ever got the full Terry. All that time in college, people probably got 20% of who I really was. They just got the student, the athlete, and the leader. They never got the person. And for the first time in my life, when I was 31 years old, I met a gentleman who's in my life today still, a guy named Jack Marsh.
Yes, sir.
Who doesn't look anything like me, twice my age, and happenstance to be in a room with me at a mixer, and we connect and we collide. And he was the board chair at Face It Together when I met him. So then after I meet him at this mixer, I go back to another advisor. I'm like, hey, I just met the board chair of the nonprofit I volunteer at. He says, Terry, you need to go back over there and ask that guy for coffee and ask him to be your mentor. I had never did either of the two in my life. But that's a code in this community.
Right.
Out to coffee.
Right.
My then mentor or advisor knew that, C.O. Powell, rest his soul, said, go back and ask that gentleman for coffee. I go back over there and say, would you like to go to coffee with me next soon or something? He's like, how about tomorrow? Yeah. So then I sit down with this guy. Like I said, he looks nothing like me, right? So he's a white guy, white hair. We're sitting at this coffee, and I'm like, will you be my mentor? And then I didn't know what I was asking for. Yeah. And then he's like, he looks at me and goes, I'll be your mentor under two conditions. One, you can't bullshit me. I am looking across at someone who I believe no way can handle the depth and the weight of my dark places. I'm like, you don't even know what you're asking for. You don't want me to bullshit you? There's no way you can handle my truth. And he says, the second thing he says, I want to formalize the program and I want you to go and apply to be Genesis participant because I'm a mentor there. I followed his guidance. I got into the program. This man has completely transformed my life and continues to transform it by teaching me things that I didn't get taught when I was a kid because my dad wasn't there to talk to me about the importance of consistency, integrity, honesty, courtesy, sobriety. And so mentorship completely transformed and helped my recovery and allows for me to be part of the way I am today because of Jack Marsh opening my mind and melting the barriers on my heart that I had when it came to men because when I was raised by a woman and so I could trust women. Men I guarded, but through my relationship with Jack, that guard came down and then I became way more open to other men being advisors and mentors to me along the way. But getting out, that's what did it for me, is learning recovery at Face It Together and then getting a mentor at the Genesis mentoring program.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And we can't just, Jack is here today.
There he is.
Jack is here today.
He's here.
And it's awesome for you to tell that story because when I pulled up here and he's parking his van, I didn't know there was going to be somebody with you. So I was excited about that. And then for you to share that story and express how important he has been to your life, I'm sure that fills his cup, makes him feel amazing, as it should. So kudos to him. For you, having that relationship with men, the negative relationship that you had, going through the time that you did, what made you comfortable with accepting a man that didn't look like you and a man in general? What allowed you to trust that was going to be somebody to trust? Yeah,
well, Zach, it wouldn't have happened without going to treatment. Because when I was in treatment in prison is when I learned the 8 positive attitudes for change. I went through a program there. It was very intensive. It was a residential treatment program. It was cognitive behavioral therapy. It was peer-to-peer accountability at a very intense level. Yeah. And what we were taught were the 8 positive attitudes for change. What is rational and irrational thinking? What are criminal thinking errors that lead people, normal, ordinary people, to make criminal choices? Things like super optimism, overconfidence, which is the thought that I can get away with it. Every person who is incarcerated has an issue with super optimism, thinking that I can get away with it.
Right.
Every person who is incarcerated has an issue with entitlement, meaning rules don't apply to me. And so being introduced to my criminal thinking errors like super optimism and entitlement helped me, but also the 8 positive attitudes for change, which are responsibility, caring, open-mindedness, objectivity, willingness, humility, honesty, and gratitude. And then I released with honesty, humility, and gratitude as champions for me. It was like, okay, here's who I'm going to be today. Now, I'm going to be an honest man. I'm not going to tell a half-truth. I'm not going to be silent when I know the truth. And I'm not going to distort or manipulate anyone. I'm going to own my history, my choices, and I'm going to be an honest man. I'm going to be a humble man. I'm going to be open to asking for help, open to receiving help, and recognizing that I need help. That's humility. And then I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be grateful in all the things that I do. I'm going to thank people for their time. I'm going to thank people for anything that they do for me that they don't have to do for me.
Right.
And so when I met Jack, I had humility, which I didn't have. And guess what else? I didn't need it as a student athlete.
Right. You was already him.
I just needed the confidence to pass the tests and stuff. And I did. I just needed confidence to want it the best and beat people in track. And I did. So athletics didn't necessarily cultivate humility for me.
Right.
And the overconfidence was a good recipe for athletic competition, but not in life. It's not good to be overconfident in life. You want to be realistic. You want to be measured. You want to be wise. You want to be calculated in life. So that's the transfer from athletics to life. But when I met Jack, I was way more humbled by life, but I was also choosing to live in humility. So when the Holy Spirit presented me Jack Marsh, a man who's agreeing to give me his wisdom and experience and saying he will do it as long as I'm able to be honest, it aligned with another one of my flag-bearing values. And I said, okay, yes, I'll do it. Right. And so it was the humility that blessed me to open up to Jack and then to other people later in life.
I love that.
That's amazing. The journey is just so crazy, and I love it. And that's one of my favorite things about this show is getting to hear people's journey. Because if you told somebody all the things that you have gone through to get to where you're at today, most people would have written you off. And I'm sure a lot of people did write you off. That was another thing that I wanted to just touch on before we move on from this is when you were going through that and you found yourself terrified, they're searching for you.
They're hunting
They're looking
me.
for you, right? After being at the top, you were the guy. You were the guy at USD, and people looking up to you, and everybody knows you. Everybody wants to be around you, be your friend. But as soon as something like that happens, it's distant or it's
No
complete
association.
silence, right? What was in particular that? Do you have what was that experience like? Did you feel like the world turned their back on you at that point? Did you feel? What did you feel about that type of situation?
Being an inmate in prison it's a reality check like none other. And it's a good thing. Even today now, as a advocate for justice reform and support for justice impacted people, I don't have an issue with incarceration. I have an issue with how we incarcerate. And I think there's some reform that can happen in the physical environments and education programs. But every person who is in prison or jail made a decision and earned their spot in that jail and in that prison. And that level of accountability, Zach, when you take that, it allows for you not to blame anyone else for why I'm here. Now, you don't get that day one.
Right.
Day one, you're still pointing that finger outward. You're still blaming the people who, told on you or, got you involved. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the choices we make in life are the reasons that everything happens.
Yeah.
People say everything happens for a reason. It's true. but it's also the choices that we make in life is the reason that everything happens. So I chose that association. I said yes to something I should have said no to. Despite my environmental conditions, despite my loyalty to friends, or despite my childhood that didn't wire me to say that's illegal, we shouldn't do that, I still chose to do it. And so when I'm in prison and I'm working towards the true self-accountability to say, I got me here, this is something I did, that allowed for me not to be blaming others for what had happened, and allow for me to then set a type of foundation that I'm able to carry forward into the work that I do now. And so thinking about the people I let down, the people that scattered, it was hard. It hurt. I was sad. I cried. There's people that are still recovering from my decision to do what I did and end up in prison. But what's out of my control is in God's hands. And I am not in control of how fast or quickly someone's willing to forgive or reunite with me. I can control my own forgiveness of other people and give grace to other people and understand where they're coming from and accept that they choose not to associate with me anymore. See, a prayer that I believe in says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and then the wisdom to know the difference. So when some people decide that they no longer want to associate, Lord, help me to accept that. Help me to accept that. And so it was hard losing a lot of the support and reverence that I had. Right. But I'm committed now today to earning it back, however long it takes. And who comes back will come back, and I will celebrate them, and it will be a joyous reunion. Yeah. And for those who still need more time, I'm praying for them, and I hope that they're praying for me.
You know, you're doing a lot of things currently to earn that back. I truly believe that you are a staple of our community. Thank you. You're doing a lot of things for people of color, but not just outside of just people of color, but just, again, the community.
Thank you.
On that. So I do just want some of our listeners to know more of what it is that you have going on in the community today.
Whereby I'm excited about a few things. I'm, the CEO at TLC Services. Yep. And so at TLC Services, our mission is to equip and empower difference makers to mature in exceptional leadership. So what I've done over the last 19, 20 years in leadership practice and study is come up with what I believe constitutes mature leadership and exceptional leadership. So much so, I applied for a PhD program at USF and got in. So I'm actually going to be starting to pursue my doctorate in leadership studies, and I'm going to do my dissertation on what constitutes mature and exceptional leadership.
Good for you.
So I breathe and bleed that into my mission statement at TLC. And so I get to facilitate groups and work with corporations and their teams and their staff and provide executive coaching and group coaching around leadership maturity, exceptional leadership, and communication. And I've been doing that for 4 years. I also incorporated and started the nonprofit Hurdle Life Coach Foundation. We have a premier program called Change. It stands for Challenging Historically Accepted Notions for Greater Expectations. It's a spirit that I came up with as a first-generation college student that allowed for me to say, you know what? Even though I was born into a single-parent home and I had a mother who was on crack and I became a dad at 15, I can challenge the historically accepted notions on my life for greater expectations, and I'm going to finish college. And then when someone said you should do grad school and I didn't know what it was, I said, I'll give it a go. I got in and I finished grad school. And I demonstrated to myself that I could challenge the historically accepted notions for greater expectations. And so when I started the nonprofit, I had an opportunity to create programming. I called it Change. And so now in the Change program, we provide group coaching to teenagers. We've done 2 youth programs already. We've graduated 18 students from that program. We just had our last graduation at the end of October. My friend Sheku Bannister serves as a co-facilitator with me in that. I have an executive assistant who supports me in administration. And how much pride do I have to go from a guy who was in diversion to starting a nonprofit with a group, with an organization, and now running a diversion.
Right.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
That is.
And knowing a little bit about Sheku, his story kind of aligns in a similar way. So first I want to thank you for all the work that you do. We both were in criminal justice. All three of us graduated with criminal justice degrees. And I think all of us had a different perspective of what that was and why we went into it, with a lot of the same ideas on what we want to see out of it. And years later now, we talk about how we don't use our degree, but I think a lot of the things that we went through with that degree align with what we're doing now. We wanted to see change in the criminal justice system, maybe not in the sense of becoming a police officer or a lawyer or whatever you think of, but in a way of changing the narrative for the people that are entering into the criminal justice system and coming out of it. With all of those things, awesome things that you're doing, one of the things that you really wanted to talk about today, and you made it a point, and I appreciate it because I had no idea that we even had this here.
Neither did I.
And so you have a new role as the Program and Services Director in the newly established South Dakota Black Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you.
What is that? What is the Black Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, it's a new organization that it's overdue for Black professionals in this community. I'm looking at two exceptional men right now, right, that when it comes down to it, likely are not involved in our greater chamber. Why do I know this? Because our chamber president just recently told me the membership of the greater chamber hovers around 25% of the incorporated businesses in the community. Only 25% of the businesses that exist are actually connected to our chamber.
Wow.
So there's 75% of business owners that are operating without being tethered to a resource that is there to help you with networking and education and financial literacy. And we now have an opportunity at the Black Chamber to target our population of people and connect them to those same type of resources. And we're going to do that not in competition with the Greater Chamber, as an extension with a shared mission. We're different organizations, but we still have a same and similar mission. We want to reach the community members who are in business and give them the resources and the environments to come together and talk about their business and learn about how to grow and scale their business. And we have a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce that started about 2 years ago. We're going to partner with them as well. And we're excited for this new momentum and energy for equity and inclusion and belonging for the marginalized. It's just a fact, right? That America, as great of a country as it is and as proud as we are to be here, it has a history of systematic oppression that we still feel today in marginalized populations. We can choose now collectively to be on the right side of history and partner in equity and inclusion efforts. And I think Sioux Falls is doing a good job of recognizing that this community needs that because of how it's growing and how colorful it's becoming. And so something like the Black Chamber is exactly what this community needs. And we're so thrilled to roll it out across the state in 4 other communities: Watertown, Brookings, Rapid City, and Aberdeen. We're also affiliated with our United States Black Chamber of Commerce and also our National Black Chamber of Commerce. So they're going to provide mentorship and resources. But I am so thrilled as our Program and Service Director to just reach those who have not been tethered to education support, business support, financial literacy. And we're even excited that we're going to be helping to coordinate some access to capital for some of our Black entrepreneurs as well. And so we're going to help truly bridge the gap and close that opportunity gap by infusing business literacy, financial literacy, and access to capital into the Black community across the state of South Dakota.
Man, that's exceptional. And there's listeners, including myself, who are just asking like, well, I want to know more about this, you know? So where can they go to learn more about this and get involved or join the BCOC?
Nice. Well, 2 places. One is the launch event and ribbon cutting, February 1st.
Okay.
5:00 at Startup Sioux Falls.
Okay.
So I've been doing some work with Startup Sioux Falls for the last 2.5 years on contract, helping to do some business accelerator coaching in partnership with LSS and their non-native English speakers that they attract. And so I've done 2 of those co-starter programs. I've done a boot camp with Startup Sioux Falls. I'm a member there. I love what they're doing. They're behind us as well as far as this wave of entrepreneurship and enterprise through the Black Chamber. And they've donated their space for us to host our event there from 5 to 6 o'clock. And then after that, we're actually going to head over to Bin 201 for a mix and mingle mixer from 7 to 9. And the community is welcome to join us there as well. I will also say our emails are up and active. And so you can reach me at programs@sdbcc.org. We also have a president, a vice president of finance, a director of communications for our 4 core member executive team. But the emails are up. The website is up. It's just a splash page right now, but you can go there, sdbcc.org, and see the splash page and the invitation to the event. But we are here now in South Dakota, and we are announcing today on Overstepping Poverty.
Yes, sir.
And that's exactly what we're going to do in our community is help people overstep that.
Let's
Absolutely.
go.
Come on now.
I love to hear it, man.
Yes, sir.
That's exactly what, it reminds me of when I started, because I got into insurance too. So a lot of the things that we've done are very similar.
I love it.
But when I got into insurance, I was at New York Life, and I've told this story before, but I'm sitting in the office, and they have the $1 million table people all on the wall. And that's people that had like $1 million in sales or commission or whatever in 1 year. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking along the wall. There's like 3 columns and 3 rows. And I'm like, dang, there's nobody that isn't white. And I feel like a lot of times we feel bad for ourselves in those moments, like this ain't fair or whatever. But my thought at that time, and it was when I was just getting started, was like, so that means that there's a whole community that nobody is reaching. And there's a whole community that the reason they're not reaching them is they may not know how to reach them or how to communicate with them. And I also found myself going to Chamber of Commerce meetings when I was starting with New York Life, and it was hard. It was hard to get in, especially if you've never been in a setting like that, to really get out there and meet people and network the way that you really need to. So to have something like this where it's a hub, it's a place where you're going to be able to go there and see people that look like you. And I think that's important because, like we just said, there's a whole community of people that need our help. There's a whole community of people that need the service. It's not that they're not capable of doing these things. They just may not have the resources.
And they want it.
And they want it.
And they will benefit from it, right? 100%. And so there's need, but there's also desire, and then there's benefit. And the community benefit from supporting any entrepreneur and enterprise, let alone those in the margins, is going to constitute us seeing a community in the way we want to see it, where everyone is thriving and leading and the community is safe, right? For me, one of my frustrations, I'll just be honest. We lift up Sioux Falls and we acknowledge it for some of the amazing things it does in building amazing new buildings and new residential options and new cuisine options and, restaurant and food and safety. But I want to see us get to the day where we're proud of how well we're doing in the margins with the homeless in transition, with the formerly incarcerated, with the Black people in your community, the Hispanic people in your community, the immigrant and refugees in your community. If I'm in a position of leadership of the highest order in this city, I'm not content until I'm in the margins as well. It's not enough to just brag and boast on the middle class and above having great quality of life. There's more people here who also deserve to have good quality of life. And so absolutely there is need there, but there's also desire, deep determination, skill, ability, faith. There's a lot of ingredients in the margins that is prime and ripe for success in life. And entrepreneurship and enterprise is one of those vehicles that we can bring into the margins, and we will, and we are bringing into the margins, and it's going to benefit the entire community.
Let's go.
I don't know if I can even count how many times I've had goosebumps since we started. This is amazing.
Yeah.
But that actually does lead me into my next question for you here before we actually move into the next part of our episode. And it's going to be a pretty heavily weighted question because it involves your opinion. And most people, when you connect the word poverty to this question here, they usually just think of just one thing, monetary. But for you, I feel like you may think of something completely different just from the life events that have happened and the growth that you've had. And that's, what is overstepping poverty to you?
Thank you. When I think of overstepping poverty, one thing I think of is an acronym that I coach on, and it's called POOR. And if you look at the acronym and the letters, people end up poor because of some of the environmental conditions that are there, but also because of their own selves and the way they pass over opportunities repeatedly. POOR, passing over opportunities repeatedly. And when I think about overstepping poverty, I think about more of how there is such a need and an opportunity to help people in poverty see the opportunities that they're passing over.
Awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have to cultivate much more visibility and awareness to the opportunities that will help to elevate you, your family, yourself out of this class of paycheck to paycheck. And poverty is yes, monetary, but I think it's mindset too. It's poverty mindset, and it's not being aware of how to get out of it because you're saturated with, here's the options I have: gang, sports. Anything else here for me in the inner city?
No,
right?
really.
But now what happens when a Black Chamber of Commerce comes into a community and introduces teenagers to entrepreneurship and let them know that, hey, your gift as an artist and the way you're designing those sneakers, do you know what it means to be a graphic designer? Do you know what it means to, merchandising, right? When you have a musician, a singer, right? Our community is full of rich cultural expression, fashion, music, entertainment, and beyond, right? Financial literacy, all type of stuff. But I think overstepping poverty has much more to do with creating more opportunities for people in poverty to say yes to versus, how much money they have or don't have.
Right.
And so how do we infuse more of those doors into communities where there aren't those resources so that we can overstep poverty, not being poor and not passing over opportunities repeatedly.
Yes.
That was amazing. Again,
Another one.
another one.
Goosebumps. I warned you, Zach.
Just drop it. You did say
I
this.
said.
You did. And I appreciate you sharing all of these things because I just know I can just feel it.
Yeah.
Right. Like I can just feel it. And when you talked about, when you mentioned when there's a Black Chamber of Commerce and they're taking these young teenagers and just speaking life into them and pointing out the opportunities that they don't see so that they can see that there are more opportunities. I just think it's so important. I think that's the goal of overstepping poverty. I think that's the goal. That is the goal of what you're doing. And it often starts with the youth, and it often starts with just a change of mindset and just being able to instill that into our community. Now, what does it look like when my kids are 15, and what opportunities are they going to have because of something you're starting now, right? So
And my
I think it's
10-year-old
powerful.
daughter. And my 10-year-old daughter who motivates me, and your child that's on the way that we don't know the name or can't get a letter.
Yeah.
No name.
Yeah.
But I do want to say I have such a gratitude in my heart. I need to express it. I want to say thank you to both of you for what you're doing with Overstepping Poverty. I've been watching this movement and this motion for the whole year you've been doing it, and I've been impressed. I don't show up to places where I'm not impressed. I don't show up to places where I don't think it aligns with my purpose and the mission that I have and what God's given me. And I have such a validation right now being here with both of you and Overstepping Poverty and what it is that I'm going to be able to continue to maybe to offer down the road, down with our South Dakota Black Chamber and paying attention to this podcast and making sure that we're doing everything we can to help people overstep poverty. Like you just said it, we got the same mission.
Man.
You know what I mean? And so I just really want to thank y'all for the devotion, the discipline to put out this message for our people. And it's just an honor to be here with both of you.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate that as well. It's nice to get those words of affirmation, encouragement, and really get those flowers, because you're right. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing, and that's to be able to go home at the end of the day, be able to, if we need to buy something, go buy it and help when we can. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's our biggest duty as humans, is just to continue to give back. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
And I do want to now open this up to what we call as roundtable. Obviously, we've asked plenty of questions to you here. I think it's time for you to get some questions out for us as well.
Nice. I was wondering about that. And I was all about being this open book, but I love the opportunity just to ask some questions to both of you. And what I guess I'm curious of in my spirit now is why this topic?
Yeah.
What kind of compelled the genesis of, we'll start a podcast, but we're never going to start a podcast about overstepping poverty.
Right.
So what drove that angle? Is there a lived experience? Is there someone else's experience? Or what was it that made you choose poverty as the central thing you wanted to discuss on your podcast?
For me, it wasn't something that I was really wanting to do. Honestly, it wasn't something that I felt, not that it wasn't important, because it is. I just didn't necessarily like the name poverty being in the name of our business and our podcast, right? Because just, I'm big on words and the things you say and the power of the tongue and all those things. But when you add the overstepping into it, it really changes things. And Daquan actually came up with the name. And when he presented it to me, I'm like, no, there's no way. And I remember when we were talking about it, what topics are we going to do? I remember being like, okay, let's talk about Coach Prime, because he just got his job at Colorado, and seeing what he did at Jackson State. And I just felt like that's part of the culture, and it shows the growth, and it's not a line of exactly what we're doing right now, but in a way it is. So he was like, no, just think about it, basically. And so we thought about it. And, ever since we were in college doing the criminal justice, in the criminal justice program, getting our degree there, actually both of us from there, we went to a residential treatment facility with LSS at Summit Oaks. And we both worked there as residential counselors. And that's with kids 10 to 18 that live there. It's basically a jail. They don't have doors on their rooms. They have to ask to use the restroom, and we have to unlock it. That's what it is for them. And I remember, for me, at least, life experience, one of the biggest reasons why I even wanted to, do criminal justice and why I wanted to become a lawyer at the time is because my cousin growing up was always in trouble. He was always in the system. And I noticed that he didn't have, he had a dad, don't get me wrong, and he always had nice clothes, looked good, everything. But I knew he didn't have the structure and the upbringing that I had with my family. And so I would see him and love him and see all the struggles that he was having. It just had something on my heart, I think. And with Daquan bringing the name up of Overstepping Poverty and tying that all in, it's always been something that has been important to me. I just never knew how I would make a change and make a difference in this realm. And honestly, I didn't know that it was going to get to this point. Yeah. When we started, it was us doing 10 topics. We did a series, basically, the first 10 episodes on the things I was learning, and we were learning from the book Think and Grow Rich, essentially.
I know that book.
And so when we start talking about the power of tongue, and I'm telling Daquan about this stuff, and he's like, dude, what are you even talking about? Yeah. And he starts to read it and learn it, and he's like, dang, this stuff is powerful. So from there, we just wanted to teach people, these are the things that you can, think about, the words you're saying, small things like that, your mental health, your physical health, the people that you keep around you, accountability, vulnerability, all of these things. And it got to a point where we were like, we can't just be the only ones talking about this anymore. There's so much more people like yourself can give to us and to the people listening and to the world that it would almost be selfish for us to be doing it just ourselves. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with a lot of things that Zacchaeus said there. Just even thinking about the name Overstepping Poverty, there's one thing that I knew. I knew that, one, if we were going to have this title, we were going to get grief from it, because people look at where I'm at today, right? And they see the things that I have and they associate those things, and they're like, well, what do you know about poverty? They don't know about my growth, though. They don't know about the story that I had before this. And so that's what Overstepping Poverty is. It's you not hiding those bad moments, those hurdles that you had to get over. It's teaching and telling people that, like, listen, even though you're going through this stuff right now, tomorrow's a different day. Tomorrow you can hurdle this, you can get through these things in life, you can become a better person. But a lot of people do not associate that when they just start seeing you driving a nice car, or they see that you're wearing nice clothes, or anything like that. They just automatically just think, you know what, he's got it all. But my vision on this here is to teach people that we need to look back and we have to embrace our journey. And when we embrace our journey and we tell our journey, the authenticity of it will teach people that it is okay to go through those things, but it does not need to dictate what you're going to do tomorrow, or who you're going to be in the future. So that's what Overstepping Poverty is. I mean, it's the knowledge base, it's the education on it. It's not just the monetary things. It's, you said it, poverty mindset. It's truly knowing that poverty is so, it's more to it than what people just place on it. There's so many different opinions and things that can go to it, and your understanding of poverty can be completely different than mine. But that doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means I have to have a different perspective, and I have to learn that overstepping poverty means that I need to let more information, so I can truly take the next step in overstepping poverty.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm inspired by that. I love what you said. I'm thinking about the is it the rescue I'm thinking of? I'm thinking about the helping people to see themselves bigger than the environment that they're in. That's what I'm seeing.
That's big too.
Yeah.
It's just
inspired.
it goes back to that, just like breathing life into people. Like, I know the feeling of when you sit down with somebody and you're having a conversation with them, and when you sit down, it's, oh, hi, how are you? And then by the end of that meeting, they're like, I'm fired up. Like, I'm ready to go take my business to the next level. I'm ready to go build this relationship. Or the energy that I feel like all of us can give people just to believe in themselves, it's very powerful. And I tell my wife about it. Like, when I get done meeting with certain people, there's so many sales meetings I've had with like potential clients, and we don't even talk about sales at all, because it's like, honestly, like, I'm here to help you buy a house, but the conversations that we're having right now, the connection that I'm feeling right now, it's bigger than that. And that's the power that Overstepping Poverty has. That's the power that you have with all that you're doing, and that's the power that you're bringing out of the people that are listening to this, the people that you're coaching. You know what I'm saying? So it's awesome.
Yeah, we got something big and special here. I'm starting to find myself at a loss of words, and that's not often that occurs.
Right.
But I'm really just thinking about, and maybe that's my next question, right? Is where do you see this going next? Because now that you're here with a visionary leader, I've got some ideas, right? I'm like percolating some stuff, man.
Yeah.
And it's just like, as I'm stepping into my new role at the Black Chamber and programs and services, I think about the mentorship opportunities that we can pair young people with to see this. Seeing is believing. That helps, right? Faith is enough too, but seeing also drives a level of confidence in people. And I'm just thinking about how not only with the young people that we'll get to connect with, but adults as well, right? That are still building their confidence and still operating with the same level of information they were given as kids. And so we got 25-year-olds, and I'm really ecstatic to work with the 18 to 30-year-old young Black people we have here in our community that are still trying to find their way. Nice. And then we can connect them with big brothers and mentors and people that are doing positive things like this. I'm myself starting to just get excited about what a partnership can truly look like with everything that I am and everything that I have to offer. But what's in your mind, like, next step for Overstepping Poverty? What are the things, the next versions of this?
Truly, I feel like this can go many different ways. Obviously with the podcasting side of things, we're doing exactly what we wanted, what the vision that we had is to, again, have people like yourself on to give their story and teach and tell and speak life into existence for other people as well, for them to learn from it. But also just the name Overstepping Poverty, I feel like a lot of people can relate with. They can attach on to that. So as you know, we do have multiple different sister companies that we work under on the umbrella of Overstepping Poverty, LLC. That's our OSP Productions. Again, when we want people to speak things into life, podcasting is a huge thing nowadays. And it's a way that people can, of course, express themselves, that they can, if they do have mental health issues, you know how much easier it is than to just bag everything up and hold it inside, to actually just get on a mic and just speak it or write it. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Therapeutic.
Exactly. It is. It's good. Very therapeutic. So we have our OSP production side on that there, where we do we take all the hard stuff out of podcasting. You don't have the equipment, can't afford it, can't do this here. We do it all for you. We'll bring it to you and create that podcast that you dreamt and make it into life. But also we have our clothing brand. But a lot of this stuff kind of formulates back to us teaching, and that's definitely something in mind that we have, whether we get into high schools, middle schools. We've spoken with other companies as well that would like to partner with us so that we can do that. But yeah, so I mean, I think we have a huge vision. And it's just us putting our feet to the ground and honestly staying course. And we welcome any opportunities when it comes out there to discuss those and see what we can nurture from it. But yeah, we're definitely open to everything here.
Yeah. We get asked this a lot, and I feel like for me it seems to change every time, just because that's the power of this, right? That's the power of having a conversation where we've known each other just passing by for a few years.
Couple years, yeah.
But it took this to build a connection, right? And have an actual conversation with somebody so that I can understand who you are and why you do the things that you do and why you're so passionate about what you do and why you're all over the place. It's because you're on a mission.
That's right.
Right. And I think that's powerful. So each time that we get to have these conversations, it seems to open up more opportunities each time. And honestly, I don't know where this will go. I know that this is special. I do 100% believe that this is a brand and a business and a podcast and an enterprise that will be known globally. Just simply because of the name. And it can be something that people relate to all over the world because we all have a brain, right? Yeah. And we all deal with mental health, and we all have to fix that mindset at some point. And when it comes to getting into the schools, like Daquan mentioned, and mentoring, I think that's a big step for us because it does a few things at that point. Not only are you getting connected to the youth, which they're the ones with all the juice, really. You know what I'm saying? They have all the fresh ideas, and they have a different perspective that we don't have. But at the same time, what does that do as we grow older? We're staying connected to people that are changing our city, so that when we get to a point where we're the mentor and we're able to guide people along and lift them up, the opportunities we'll be able to provide and resources and all those things we never had. So I don't know. There's so many things that could happen, and I would love for this to be the biggest thing ever, of course.
Nice.
But getting into the community, making a difference, connecting with businesses like yours. I think of places like Think 3D of doing a lot of mind work and helping people just take that next step to becoming a better person. When you give, they say you give, you're going to receive that, tenfold or, so as long as we keep giving, the rest will take care of itself, Man.
I'm on board. I got one more?
Yeah.
I get one more?
Let's do it.
So I'm thinking, and I think you were telling me I'll get to maybe end with some tips or tricks or some hacks and stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking to myself as I'm getting to know my new friends and brothers, along your journey, when we talked about mentorship, and I imagine that maybe there's some mentors in your life or people that you're mentoring now. I'm curious as I'm getting to know each of you, like, what is like, I don't know if it's one or two things, but like some of the best advice you've gotten to get through this thing called life? You know, on your hard days when you're ready to give up and throw the towel in, or you're asking yourself, is it worth it anymore? Like, whose voice do you hear that keeps you going? And what is it that they say to you? You know, what is it that you're telling yourself to keep on going? Or said differently, what is some of the best advice you've gotten to keep you positive, optimistic, and just going after goals in life?
When I got to New York Life, I met this man named Alex D'Agostino. He was the managing partner, and he's who hired me. Yeah. And he had an amazing story, and I was just, he was a great teacher as well. But he told me a few things, and I think about them, not every day, but pretty often. One of them is more sales, and it's, if somebody is agreeing to meet with you, there's something that you have that they want in some capacity, whether that's friendship, whether that's information, whether that's a business partnership. There's some reason. People aren't just wasting their time, right, to go meet with you for no reason. So there's always something. If they're agreeing to it, you got your foot in the door. The other thing is that he taught me, and it goes a lot with life insurance, but think with the end in mind was something that I think in society today, people don't think long-term enough. And, you know, whether it is people making the wrong decisions that end them up in jail or prison, oftentimes it's short-term thinking. And I think just having that mindset of thinking with the end in mind, understanding that where you want to be, what you want to be, and what you want out of life is not going to happen today. So you need to build those blocks to get to where you want to be. Other than that, I watch so much YouTube and different motivational speakers, and Bob Proctor is somebody that I love. One of my favorite quotes from him, and it's super simple. If you can see it in your head, you can hold it in your hands. Nice. And just the power of manifesting that and seeing it and feeling it. It's powerful. It's powerful.
It is. All right. So I don't know why I had a brain fart there, but the two things that I typically live by is, one is going to be, people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. Exactly. And then the other is just as far as when it comes to relations with people, they seldom often will remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you feel. Now, I'm in sales, so when it comes to person-to-person aspects and relationships, I truly do my best to make sure that I'm fully in the moment of creating those. Just because, of course, even though the sales is done, when my customers walk away, I want them to know that our relationship that we have doesn't just stop at the dealership, because that's not just me. That doesn't define me. And so for people that are listening and they work for these companies, and you know, you're thinking about a dollar, right? You cannot put a dollar on a person. It's just something that, I mean, there is no amount of money that can, if a person leaves and it goes away from this world here, there's no way that you can buy them back, right? So that's my main thing, is like, when you are creating and cultivating a relationship, make sure that you give your all to that, whether it's your attention, your time, just be there, be in the moment, you know? So that's my two things there. So
love it.
Yes.
Thank you.
But that does actually bring us into yours now.
There we go.
You know, those 5 tips, tricks, and hacks that you tell someone in Overstepping Poverty. 5
tips, tricks, and hacks to overstepping poverty. How's that lead in?
Oh, man. It leads into it.
So here's what I'm thinking. The first thing I would advise is to believe that you can overstep poverty. You talk about the book Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill. I read that book, and one of the things he says, and he's renowned for, is that whatever the mind can conceive and then believe, it can achieve. And you said it differently. If I can see it in my head, I can hold it in my hand. So the first thing to accomplishing anything is telling yourself that I can do it. I can overstep poverty. I will overstep poverty. I am overstepping poverty. The intentionality of speaking my reality into existence through the words that I choose to say. First thing is believing that you can. We mirror that in my coaching at Hurdle Life, the mentality of getting over a hurdle. The first thing the hurdler has to do is believe that they can get over the hurdle. So it's how I start every coaching environment and experience is first building belief that you can.
Right.
Because it is also said that if you think you can, then you will. And if you think you can't, then you won't. The choice is up to you on what you choose to believe.
Right.
So the first thing is believe that I can. The second thing I would advise when it comes to overstepping poverty is to get educated, right? To explore the concept, the topic, and to figure out what constitutes poverty. How do people end in poverty? What does that really mean? There's material, there's spiritual, there's all different type of currency. Financial is only one type of currency. You know, there's social capital, there's professional capital, there's relational capital, there's spiritual capital. And so I think by exploring the term poverty with a little more humility, you can see that there's more there than just finances that we're looking to overstep.
Right.
And a different type of bank account that we're looking to make deposits in. I'm telling you, for me today, as an entrepreneur and business owners, it starts with my spiritual bank account. The first thing I'm going to be able to what I focus on first in overstepping poverty in my own life is my spiritual bank account. And how do I get deposited into my spiritual bank accounts? Through prayer, through devotion to scripture, through having people around me who are speaking life into me as I battle my insecurities, because we all have insecurities. Every human being, no matter their financial bank account statement, they're a human being and they battle insecurities. And how you surround yourself with will help to build that spiritual bank account as you look to overstep poverty in that way. So I would just encourage a humility to the word poverty and to explore it maybe deeper than you understand it. Right. Third, I would then encourage to understand how finances work, right? There is a deep ignorance in our community when it comes to financial literacy, financial products. You know how many people die in inner cities and there's no life insurance in place at all? And so now those families are, on the corners selling baked goods, trying to bury their loved one, right? Because there wasn't real education around the importance of that financial product. And life insurance is just one financial product, right? A checking account is a financial product, a savings account, a CD, an IRA, and all these, a trust, LLCs, all these things that, unless you have that exampling in your family, no one's talking about that. I'm a first generation business owner. Right. And so, I'm still learning more and more about financial services and products and literacy, but also my nephews and my children have been exposed to much more than I ever would have because of the entrepreneurship and enterprise lifestyle that I'm living. Right. And so I think now beyond poverty, it's really going into financial literacy in products and being able to explore that.
I like that.
Like that one? The fourth step to overstepping poverty is getting connected with Terry Liggins and TLC Services and Hurdle Life Coach Foundation.
Shameless plug. I love it. I love it.
Come on.
Why? I have to ask you why.
Yeah, I know a guy. I know him well. The dude will fire you up.
Yeah.
Hey, because you don't need some motivation, right? Because, there's like hurdles and there's mountains and there's inclines and whatever you want to call it that's between you and your finish line, you're going to need some motivation. You're going to need some motivation. And I'm very motivated. I got all type of things that I tell myself and I tell my people to keep them motivated. I'll tell them, you know what? Persistence beats resistance. Every single time. Oh, you're struggling right now? That's cool. That's par for the course. Remember, persistence beats resistance every single time. It's not right now. Right? It's long-term thinking. It's begin with the end in mind. You can do it as long as you believe you can. Hurdle life. Say it with me. Hurdle life. Say it with me. Hurdle life.
Hurdle life.
And I'm on my clients and I'm firing them up to give them the type of resilience and confidence you need to beat doubt, to beat fear,
that voice,
to beat intimidation. Because if you don't have motivation, they're going to beat you. You're going to stay in bed. You're going to stay in the house. You're not going to post anything. You're not going to tell people what you're up to because you're intimidated. You're afraid of rejection and all this other stuff. But I'm like, hurdle life. I'm like, persistence beats resistance. I'm getting people all fired up. And so some motivation will take a person a long way too.
Let's go.
Come on.
Yeah,
Right?
persistence over resistance.
Every single time.
I love that.
Yes.
You need to put that on a shirt.
I know. I need to get in the merch game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then the final thing I'm going to say, and I'm glad I get a chance to say this because it's guiding me this year. So most people set New Year's goals and resolutions. I set a letter to guide me through the year. Last year was F, and I was about friends and flexibility and flying and you know, just all through F. This year I'm pushing P.
Okay.
The song Pushing P.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm taking it from the industry and I'm giving it to the kingdom. And I'm pushing P by pushing prayer first, then also peace second, purpose, progress, and praise. And the thing, what I'm saying is, I want to encourage people to pray. I'm not going to tell you who to pray to or what to pray about, but get in the relationship with the Spirit, with the Creator. Get into relationship with the Creator and ask for some clarity on what you were created to be. Yeah. And you can also ask in prayer for the things that you don't feel you have and you possess, right? Prayer taps you into the supernatural. And so I'm pushing P all year long. I'm starting with prayer. And I think that's going to also help us overstep poverty. It's having strong, devoted prayer life.
Absolutely. Because when you do that, when you are praying, like you said, regardless of who you're praying to, you are learning actively more about yourself in those moments. And that's deep introspection.
Deep.
And I think you basically gave us 10 with the 5 at the end.
Yeah, with the other P's.
So I appreciate that, brother.
5 P's. Let's go.
Pushing P.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you being on our podcast here. Again, you have brought so much value to this here as well. And I'm sure in any room that you walk in, I'm positive you bring value. So again, we appreciate that. We appreciate all the knowledge and the wisdom that you brought to us today. I know our listeners are probably super motivated, probably pacing right now while they're listening to this. Right. Exactly.
Typing it in right now.
Yep. They probably wrote down the 5 P's. Again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Happy to be here. Thank you for what you're doing, gentlemen. You're leaders, you're influencers, you're difference makers. Your life matters. You're making a difference, and we're all better because of it too. So I'm looking forward to continuing to stay locked in arms, finding ways to invest in this movement and in this motion. And just thanks for having me here today.
Absolutely. It was a blessing.
Yes, it was. And as you guys know, this podcast is brought to you by OSP Productions, the podcast producing company that helps you make podcasting easy. No audio? That's okay. No visual? That's okay. No equipment? That is okay. We will help you and guide you guys through that process. Let's make that dream come into reality. Just go ahead and contact us at oversteppingpoverty.com or oversteppingpoverty@gmail.com. Thank you so much again for tuning into this episode. We'll see you next week in Overstepping Poverty. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Overstepping Poverty. We hope you found this week's discussion informative and thought-provoking. We know that tackling poverty is a complex issue, but by working together and understanding the root causes, we can make progress towards creating a more equitable society. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our show. Until next time, let's take the next steps in Overstepping Poverty.